Okay, what is the big deal with these functions? And it talks about each value of x corresponds to only one value of y. So you've seen a lot of something, say like that. And all we're going to do is now show that we have a function. So we have some kind of input, which is our x value, and then the entire f of x or y will be our output. So let's just say we had x squared. If our function was x squared and I put in, I don't know what, 5, then what would I get out? X, which is 5 squared. That's all a function is. But you have to be careful with functions that, you know, if you had something written like x equals y squared plus 3, if you think about this, I could plug in different values for y and get different values for x. So that is definitely not a function. All right, let's clean my board up here. If I can find my mouse. Do you ever lose your mouse? I always lose my mouse. All right. So let's clean this up a little bit and do some actual examples, because typically what you do with these now is you're given a function and you're given an input value, and then they just simply ask you to find the value of the function. So let's say, for example, I am given, let's just go back to my x squared. And how this is written, they will write inside the parentheses your input. So that just simply means where you see an x, plug in your value. You might see something like f of 3. Well, the same thing. Where you see the x, you plug in your value. You can be given a function that looks like this. If you go back and you think about it, and I said y is your function, that would just simply be the line y equals -5. Okay, so if I said, well, now find f of 3, it would be -5, right? Because if you're looking at f of x or y equals -5, then it doesn't matter where your x value is, you will always hit that y value of -5. These, of course, can get more complicated, meaning larger functions such as 3x squared minus 5x plus 7, and then ask to find f of 1. You still just do the same thing. You just simply plug in the value, and then you do all the math there, or you pick your calculator up, and you will see that you're just getting values of the actual function. Now, there are some other things that are going to come up, such as the domain, which the domain of a function is what values can you plug in for x, and basically have no problem. Couldn't you plug in any x value at all? You could plug in fractions, you could plug in negative values, meaning any value, negative infinity to infinity. When you have to worry one place, you cannot take the square root of a negative number. You cannot take the square root of a negative number. So if you think about it, if this was 7, you can take the square root of 0. So it'd be 7 minus 7 is 0. Well, think about what if it was 8? Well, now you're going to have 7 minus 8, a negative number. So we have to stop at 7, but we could plug in any number up to that, because if it's a negative value, a negative and a negative is a positive. If it's a 6, a 5, anything less than 7, then this would be our domain. The other time you have to worry about domains is when you are dividing. Because remember, you can never, ever, 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 ever divide by 0. So normally what you do when you have something that looks like this is you would factor. Remember the difference of two squares? You would factor the denominator, and you would see the problem here if x is -5 or if x is 5, we have a problem, right? Because you're going to be dividing by 0. So in other words, x cannot equal those values. So your domain would be -infinity all the way up to -5, but you cannot include it. Why the parentheses? Or now you can jump to the other side of -5, don't include it, to 5, and then from 5 to infinity. And you kind of see that, you can go back old school here. So -5 and 5, those values cannot be included. But anything in here, which is what you're seeing over here, can be included. So you have to be careful inputting values to ensure that they're not messing with that domain. And that's pretty much it with functions. I mean, you will see lots of different types of functions, but just plugging in to find the value of function is just plugging in that input and getting your output.